Hi, Aaron. How are you doing?
I'm great, Scott. How are you?
Doing good. Doing good. I usually say, Aaron Fulk, how are you doing? But I just said your first name. I don't know why, but you recently just got back from a trip. Where were you?
Miami.
Looking tan, so that's good.
I didn't go outside at all. Are you kidding me? I was out in a conference room. In fact, my 18-year-old sent me a text halfway through the week. He said, "How's vacation?" I'm like, I'm a mother of teenagers. I don't go on vacation. If I go out of town, I'm just working. But you want to know a fun fact? I got back from Miami at 4:30 on Friday. So I was there from Monday morning till 4:30 on Friday. Got in my car, came and picked up Devin, and then drove to Illinois. Didn't even come home.
Whoa.
One last ACT needs one more point to make this a full ride scholarship. So,
Wow.
yeah, so we had to go to Illinois to take it, and I think he probably killed it, and he'll be moving to New York, and he's keeping me up to date 48 days.
That's 48 days. That's actually a pretty far way away, but it seems short to you.
Fun fact. This is a fun fact. If the kids that we know that are going on the East Coast and the West Coast, they start after Labor Day. Midwest starts before.
I do not get that. That's interesting.
It's really wild. They're just on a little bit different of a schedule out there.
Yeah, I bet you Bestway International probably knows that information because they do business all throughout the world and North America. So they got to be figuring out when they're shipping on the East Coast or the West Coast.
Do you know what I learned from Bestway? There's a very big Virginia. There's a huge port in Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of East Coast action over there. But Virginia, I didn't know Virginia had as big a port as they did. I learned that from Bestway recently.
I had no idea. Evardy Construction, outside of building every time you eat at a restaurant, they built it here at the Kansas City International Airport, which I think has a little bit of momentum to be renamed the Twyman Airport. A lot of their work is in the Midwest, although Evardy Construction, fun fact, got referred the opportunity, I think, out of a company out of Utah for Kansas City International.
Oh, wow. Wait, what are you talking about? They're going to rename the airport.
They're thinking about renaming the airport the Twyman Airport. I do not know why. I don't know if former guest Quentin Lucas was looking for something to distract people about the stadium not getting done, but either way, it sounds cool and it sounds interesting.
That man can sure. Did you ever watch the show Scandal back in the day?
Yeah.
So there was someone that had been in the White House that was a writer. And my favorite part of that show is they go, look over here. Well, he did this over here. So I don't know. I just thought about that. So anyways, this is not a political show. We're not going to talk politics. They changed my whole software here, and I'm hoping they still have this absolutely terrible music.
I'd be after 6 years if they don't have this song. Oh, I hear it. We're good.
All right, we're going to bring in our guests, and then we're going to just start asking the questions. First guest today. I forgot to say, if you are watching, let us know. If you're watching on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, live or the replay. Here we go. Come on in, Zach. And Zach. Hi, guys.
Hey.
Good to see you.
How do you feel about that music?
Music was great. I was getting excited.
Oh, I know.
Come on.
Aaron hates it.
I hate it so much.
Hard rock.
I don't hate it enough to do anything about it. I just hate it every week. It's just a little cringe. All right, Matt, you're up first. Who are you? What do you do? How do you get to Kansas City?
Well, my name is Matt Twyman, and I am the owner of Adaptive Solutions Group. So we're an IT recruiting and professional services recruiting company. We do really anything around talent solutions. And I ended up in Kansas City, originally being born here. So that was the first part. And then, I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri, grew up in Brookside, and then went to Rockhurst High School, ended up going to Mizzou. So that was really the first time I moved out of Kansas City. In 2002, I did move to St. Louis for 6 years. So moved down there to help start our company and found it with a business partner, actually two business partners at the time. So and then I moved back to Kansas City again in 2009. So my wife was military brat. Her father, my father-in-law, was retired Air Force Special Ops Colonel. So my wife spent her entire life moving all over the place. She actually graduated high school in Germany. So then she went to K-State, but she was like, it was very important that the kids grow up with a nucleus and a community. So when my oldest boy was going into kindergarten in 2009, that's when we moved back. So I have 4 kids, and he's 22 now, just graduated from Alabama. And then I have one that just graduated from high school at Blue Valley North. He's going to Mizzou. And then I have 2 others that are in high school. So busy house.
So Matt, with the nature of your business, how often do you have to adapt?
Well, as the name suggests, really daily, because that's one of the fun things. You know, I got into this industry. It's funny, I was a history major in college. So you get out and you're like, well, what do you do with that? And I stumbled into the recruiting world on a referral, which is ironic since we thrive off referrals. But I immediately just love the action, and I love that it was not monotonous. It's different every day. You're dealing with people. People are exciting. People are interesting. Jobs are always changing. I mean, the technology has changed and evolved since when I got into this world in 1994 to present day. And still, you mentioned AI earlier. We were talking offline, but I mean, just everything is always new, always evolving, and it keeps it fresh. So makes it exciting.
Yeah, everything from Y2K to artificial intelligence. Go ahead, Aaron.
What is right now, because even the IT recruiting space, right, has changed so much. What is the number one role you see people trying to fill right now?
Usually has to do with data engineering, robotic process automation, data science. Everybody's trying to forecast data, look ahead, do predictive analytics, and then just improve the efficiency of their business and streamline things. So that's what keeps us most busy.
Yes, Aaron, I think it's on mute, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
I was trying to read her lips, but I couldn't.
I was trying to read her lips too.
One of the spaces I see growing a lot with my clients is a lot of people are bringing in, it's on more the fractional side, but they're bringing in like AI analysts, AI experts to figure out how to implement AI in their business. That's like a fast growing space I'm seeing.
Definitely.
All right, Zach. Thanks, guys. I'm a little off today, obviously. Who are you? What do you do? How do you get to Kansas City?
Yeah, well, I'm Zach Arend. I'm a keynote speaker, corporate coach, facilitator. And how I got to Kansas City? Well, at 8 years old. That's where we're going to start today.
All right.
My mom bought me my first horse. It was a Shetland pony named Princess. So that got me into horses, 4-H, grew up in a small town. Mom and dad owned a small town grocery store. But by the time I was 14 years old, I decided I wanted to ride saddle broncs in the rodeo. So for 2 years, I did nothing but hit the ground. Never once made it to the 8-second buzzer. I broke my hand, ankle, collarbone, and a couple concussions. But then I think I was a sophomore in high school. No, I was a junior in high school. Things started clicking. And the final 2 years, I became 2-time state champion in saddle bronc riding event. And that earned me a full-time ride scholarship to Fort Scott Community College, just south of here. And that's what got me close to Kansas City. But then there was a girl that lived in Kansas City. And, I was kind of getting to the point where it's time to settle down, and decided to hang up the boots and spurs and move to Kansas City. And of course, it didn't work out with that girl, but I married my wife, beautiful wife, Shandy. We now have 3 daughters, Claire, Sophie, and Thea. We've lived in Kansas City now for 12 years now.
Wow.
I thought the transition of the horse was going to talk about getting to Kansas City, but maybe the origin of your business. Can you share a little bit more?
Oh, yeah. Well, that really shifted. So after a 10-year career, I was working with a company that when I started the company, we had 30 employees and promotions every year, new assignments, new projects, worked my way all the way up to vice president of sales in the organization. And did that for several years, but then it all came to a head over a glass of bourbon when basically I got demoted back down to sales guy. And, naturally, that's not what I wanted to do. And I knew I had more to offer. And I, for the first time in my life, actually decided to pursue my own path. And I invested a lot of money in coach training. I went through a 11-month-long program to train as a coach, a leadership coach. And I started taking clients on the side, and one thing led to the other. I spent some time at North Point Development, being an internal coach for them. And then about 2 years ago, I stepped out full time to build my coaching practice, keynote speaking, and also an EOS implementer. So I have several legs of the stool in my business, but that's how I've ended up where I am today.
I have a question on the EOS. I'm obsessed with EOS, by the way. Do you like, when you go in to implement for EOS, do you like to work with businesses that have already tried it just from the book? Or do you like, for they haven't touched anything yet, now you get to start from scratch with them?
I think that they're both very unique. I would rather start from scratch if I'm going to choose, but I just have to, when they've already gone down the road of EOS, it's a little harder to unlearn some of the bad habits or what they thought the tool was, but it's all part of the process. It just takes coaching and facilitation to help them best leverage the tools and get it implemented. So yeah, but for sure, beginner's mind is always good in probably anything.
I've never had an implementer, but I'm just wondering. I'm the person that loves the book, that's hands-on.
Yeah,
awesome. I have some friends that do implementation with EOS and they love it. And you get to watch companies soar. So if anyone doesn't know about EOS, reach out.
Yeah.
Zach.
That's great.
So Matt, what was the most pivotal point in your career?
So it had to have been in 2002. I said earlier, I started in the recruiting world in 1994, had done that for the majority of my career. I took a small hiatus and I started selling legal software. So it was the first time in my life I was working out of my house. I had a boss in Denver. I had complete autonomy. I had the entire state of Missouri. So I was doing really good and enjoying it. But I had a former coworker reach out to me and tell me that he was moving to St. Louis, where he was originally from, back from Los Angeles, to start a company doing what we had done, and asked if I wanted to be a part of that if they had ever decided to expand to Kansas City. So I quickly said, well, I am interested. However, would it be possible to come down to St. Louis and join you, from the ground level, help you build the organization? And so I took that leap of faith and, never looked back. It was a risk, of course. I had a great job at the time. My wife was also working and gainfully employed at Sprint PCS as an attorney. And we were, dual income, no kids. And then we decided to take that leap into entrepreneurship, move to St. Louis, and start my company in 2002. So, and thankfully, she was extremely supportive throughout. She was pregnant at the time with our first child. So we ended up moving to a more expensive city. We went from dual income, no kid, to no income, kid on the way. And so it was daunting first year or so. And I remember those days of the decision to, do we rent an office? Do we pay for a website? Some of those early decisions that you have to make when you're looking at costs. When do you cut yourself a salary, and tap into the loan? When do you not? But, for anybody that's out there considering entrepreneurship, I'd highly encourage you to take the risk if you have a well thought out plan and you trust your partners.
So I'm the only non-entrepreneur here. Do you think there has to be a little naiveness to do it?
Yeah, blind faith maybe, right? I mean, you definitely have to take that leap and you have to trust, I think, at the end of the day. Well, you believe in yourself, Scott, and everybody on this call. So I always looked at it like, number one, I was at a point where if it didn't work out, I felt confident I could go back and find a job in my old world, relatively easily. And so I always felt there was a fallback if need be, but I always looked ahead and there's no better way. If you're a driven person anyway, your drive and ambition and your need to not fail goes exponentially through the roof.
I think that it's called delusion, and I think you have to have a little bit of it to be an entrepreneur. But I also think probably because you had that baby on the way, I think because you had that baby on the way, there wasn't as much as you say, I thought there was this plan B. I think that baby took out any plan B, right? Because you're going to, you probably went harder.
Yep. Yeah, we worked hard. We worked furious. those first couple of years especially. But it's entrepreneurship, so you're still working hard to this day. But again, that's kind of what makes it fun.
So Zach, what was the most pivotal point in your career?
Yeah, well, I shared the demotion. That was the starting point of having to ask some different questions, and that was the question. Really was, what do I really want? Because I got demoted, and my first knee-jerk reaction is like, well, screw this company. I'm gonna go find a VP of sales somewhere else. But then I just decided that rather than jumping into another pressure cooker of leadership, it was time to lead myself, and that's what set me on this path of becoming a coach. And I started getting some clients. And around that time, a friend of mine who works at North Point Development reached out, and we had dinner. Before I know it, he's recruiting me to come be a coach for them. And I had already made an internal commitment to myself that I was building my own business. I was not looking for a job. And I was so open and honest about that. I said, I'm not looking for a job. I have clients. And he said, that's cool. You can keep doing that. And so that night, they actually needed an EOS implementer internally. And so that night I picked up the book Traction. I read it the night before the interview, cover to cover, and I got the job. And in the interview, I even said, I have clients. And so if that doesn't work for you guys, like I was so out in the open. Every month I'd have a touch point with my manager. I give her an update on my business, like I didn't hide it at all. And that was a huge pivotal point for me on two ways. One, it was who I was being, because I really just took on the identity that I am a coach. I'm building a business. I'm not, and it changed so much about how I approached conversations. You only asked for one, but I want to give a second one because about a year into that, I knew I needed to start sharing my story. I wanted to get on stages and learn how to speak. I met a man by the name of Bo Eason, who wrote a book. There's no plan B for your A game, which he trains public speakers, and he convinced me to get on stage and share my personal story of riding in the rodeo and riding broncs, because nobody even really knew that about me. I didn't tell anybody because I was ashamed. I quit. I didn't make it all the way to the top, even though I was state champion, all of that. Now it's a huge focal point of everything I do about helping leaders lead from the arena, get out of the grandstands and play full out in their lives. And so it's been a huge catalyst to my career, bringing forth more of my personal journey beyond the boardroom. So yeah, that's the two big pivotal moments in my career for sure.
I want you to go look up, and I'm trying to find his name. I can't remember his name. I don't know if you guys know the story of Uggs. Oh, here it is. But I want you to go look up the founder of Uggs and read his story. But essentially, he got his entire company taken away to go back to being the sales guy. And just, I've seen him speak in person. I think it would be really pivotal for your career if you saw him and then saw what he went through, because he's turned into a huge speaking career.
Arend, how many pairs of Uggs did you own in 2002?
Oh, you guys, I was a very great early 2000 20-year-old. I had all of them. And they're back now. Now my teenager has them. So, but it's a cool story. If you guys have never seen it, now there's two founders of Uggs. So it's the American founder, because he branded it. He didn't actually make the actual shoe, but you'll see it. He's great. Yeah, go watch him. Okay. All right, here we go. So we are over halfway through 2025, guys. It's crazy. So, Matt, my question is, how are you doing on your 2025 goals, and how can the Kansas City community help you get there?
Well, great question. I think that the goals we're doing pretty good. We're close to our goals for the year. And, we started 23 years ago. These last couple of years for hiring have been it's a roller coaster ride. Hiring as a whole has been choppy, and a lot of people sitting on the sidelines playing wait and see and sitting on cash. So, and with the jobs ever changing, as I mentioned earlier, there's just a lot of variance in what we're getting out of the clients. But I think the thing that's most exciting is we're at our best when we're in person with people. We're a services industry, and I think what we try to do is go above and beyond on service and on relationships. And I mentioned referrals earlier. I love the fact that most of our business is once again in Kansas City, looking for folks in Kansas City. For those couple of years after COVID, the Great Resignation happened. People were taking jobs all over the country. It, in some ways, expanded the landscape. We W-2 people now in 16 different states. And for a period of time, we were really intent a few years ago on finding and connecting with remote people. And while that works, we're again at our best here, local, attending events, grabbing coffee, grabbing lunch with people, and doing good old-fashioned networking. And so now that I would say probably 95% of the jobs we get are right in the local market. They want people that, well, they may not be back in the office 5 days a week. They're usually in some hybrid sense. And even if they're allowing for fully remote, they still want them in Kansas City if they can, just to come in and do collaboration, team building, go to events. And so it's forced our team back into that local market, again, where we're at our best. And so I just think, how can Kansas City help is if you're looking for talent and we can be of a service to you and map you to people we know to help improve your outcomes and your projects, then, we'd appreciate a chance to work with you. Or if you're looking for a job for that matter, that's another thing. We can obviously help you in that transition.
Go ahead.
Oh, cool question. How long were you in business where you kind of completely started operating off of pure referrals? How long did that take?
Well, it can happen quick. But when we started the company in St. Louis, my business partners had moved from California and I had moved from Kansas City. So we didn't
to break into.
We didn't buy a company. We didn't buy a database. We organically, grassroots, built it all up, phone call after phone call and meeting after meeting. And so very early on, you really had to rely on the referrals. Naturally, for me, it helped me starting in this business in 1994 because guess what? There was no internet. We found our talent through ads in the Sunday paper. We made a phone call and we turned that into something. And so just the good old-fashioned networking is still prevalent to this day for our success. So.
Yeah, your industry's changed a lot, much like mine. But if you're not changing, you're not adapting. So
that's right.
You're not growing. All right, Zach, how are your 2025 goals going? And how can the Kansas City community help you?
They're going great. And yet I took on a new project about 2 months ago. I'm writing a book all about the subtle art of leading yourself so that you can lead others. And writing a book is way more difficult than I thought it would be. But I've got a coach and I'm working through it and having a lot of fun in that struggle. But where Kansas City could really help is part of the book. I've found a real need in organizations where there reaches a point in most people's careers, leadership, where they have to start learning to trust themselves and tap into more of a creative approach rather than constantly reacting to their environment and the people. Because if we're constantly taking cues from everybody else's agenda, we can't really lead in our organizations. And so that's where the subtle art of leading yourself comes from. And so I'm putting together a company workshop called Unbridled Leadership, which is all about unbridling yourself from all the trying to live up to everybody else's expectations and please everyone, because that is totally at odds with true leadership. We've got to be willing to step out of our comfort zone and truly lead. And I love helping leaders do that because it's personal to my story. But teaching leaders the subtle art of leading themselves so they can lead others. So I'm doing workshops for companies. I also have my own event called Saddle Up Live. I've done it twice a year.
That's cool.
Yep. Saddle Up Live. It's at the Crossroads Hotel. I haven't announced the date, but maybe that I have the date, September 26th. Details will be coming out soon. That'll be the third time I've done the event at Crossroads. So I want to work with leaders that are going to new levels in their career and wanting to, that idea of what got you here won't get you there. And there's an awareness around that, but it's difficult to break out of the old patterns and old habits. And I love helping leaders do that. And so how Kansas City can help is send your leaders to Saddle Up Live, follow along, because I love what I do, but I only get to do what I do when I have courageous people in front of me willing to roll up their sleeves and do the work of growth. So that's always what I'm looking for. It's what grows my business and it's what I love to do. So
how do people sign up?
They go on my website, zacharend.com. Everything's there. My workshop, the event, everything.
ZACHAREND.
Yep. ZACHAREND.com.
Cool.
Yeah.
You got a last question?
My question is actually similar to what I asked Matt, is when did you start operating on pure referrals? Because you keep busy with just people reaching out to you.
Yeah. It was about a year in. And I just remember, like, how am I going to grow? How am I going to get this thing going? And I've just learned that you do great work, it comes back around. So I've really focused and doubled down on just doing great work.
Boom.
Good job. Good answer.
I saw I was out of time, so I just put a period right there.
No, that was
Stop.
great. All right, here's the
Done.
deal. Here is the deal. We want to thank you guys so much for coming on today. So what's the best way to reach you, Matt?
Our website is adaptivesg.com. SG like Solutions Group. Or you can find me on LinkedIn, Matt Twyman.
And Zach, you're right here on LinkedIn as well?
Yeah, LinkedIn, Zach Arend, or my website, zacharend.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much to Bestway International and Evardy Construction for being our amazing sponsors. Scott, thank you so much for being the best co-host ever. Kim, real quick, said, big fan of Zach and his perspective on leadership. So you got a fan that looks like Zach. With that said, we will see you same time, same place next week. Enjoy your summer.